With y'all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome.
Yahweh, Yahweh.
Of the flashes and illuminations as their strikes take place right around now.
So they can't see me, right?
They can see.
Oh,
They
but
just-
the pictures
Oh,
up there.
sorry. I thought that was you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're waiting for folks to join us, so we'll give it another minute or two.
This is mine.
Yahweh.
Yeah.
Yahweh.
Few more, please. Oh,
You, right?
All right, we have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm just going to go and get started. We have about 54 people on the call right now, and we are expecting over 100 participants today. So we are recording. So if folks are not able to join us or couldn't be here today, they can watch the recording later. So welcome to our COFA and CIFA 101 session. My name is Janice Deguchi. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Executive Director of Neighborhood House. Neighborhood House is located here in Seattle, Washington, and we are a 117-year-old community action agency serving over 12,000 families and adults living in Seattle and King County. Our 350 staff speak 40 different languages and provide early learning, youth development, employment, health navigation, housing stability for people from birth to end of life. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge our Neighborhood House COFA team, Triple J's Kaminaga, Florence Injimis, Bradley Carlos, Cece Hine, and Driscoll Jack. And they have been working tirelessly on I-94 issues and connecting our COFA community to resources. And it was this team that came up with the idea to have an info session on COFA and CIFA when we realized that even though we've been working on this issue, working on just with the community for a while, we were unaware of CIFA. And CIFA is the Compact Impact Fairness Act. And our intention for this session was to educate ourselves as well as our congressional delegation here in Washington State and the Washington State legislators that have been so instrumental in securing Medicaid benefits to COFA Washingtonians. We have on the call several people that are learning about COFA for the first time. So we're going to do some basic orientation so we can all be on the same page. And we also want to welcome people from elsewhere outside of Washington State. And we're thrilled to have you all join us. Today's session is recorded, again, so we can share with policymakers that are not here today. And I also want to thank our CIFA bill sponsors that I'm not sure if they're in the call today yet, but I was told they were going to be joining us from Senator Hirono's office and Representative Ed Case's office. And also want to do a quick shout out to Andrew Hayes from our own Congressman Adam Smith's office, who also recently signed on to CIFA. The first hour of our session will focus on the federal perspective. And we have 3 speakers that will be talking about the federal perspective. And then the last half hour will be on the local perspective, starting with 2 speakers from Washington State. So our first speaker, and then after our federal, 3 speakers go in the federal area, we'll have Q&A. So our first speaker is just Driscoll Jack, or DJ, and DJ is a Costa Rican pioneer, first from his community to arrive in Seattle 40 years ago. And ever since he arrived, DJ has been working to help the Costa Rican community settle, survive, and thrive. And 3 years ago, Neighborhood House hired DJ as a resource navigator. And DJ is going to give us a brief history about the relationship between the US and the 3 freely associated states. the Republic of Marshall Islands, the Republic of Palau, and the Federated States of Micronesia. Angela Edward is a Micronesian American daughter and a licensed clinical social worker. She's an activist and with powerful experience serving people from marginalized communities. In the past decade, Angela has worked with families facing homelessness, youth, young people, community elders, persons diagnosed with comorbidities, individuals impacted by mental illness, and within the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Angela will provide a brief overview of the COFA and CIFA. And we are extremely honored to have Keone Nakoa, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Insular and International Affairs. Keone joined the Department of Interior in 2021 from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, where he worked with Congress and federal agencies as the Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief. Keone previously served as a speechwriter for the late Senator Daniel Akaka and clerk for the Chief Judge of the Hawaii Intermediate Court of Appeals, and as a lawyer in private practice in Honolulu. Keone will share more specific information about CIFA and information about the negotiations for the renewal with the freely associated states. And then after Keone speaks, we'll have time for Q&A, which we will do our best to moderate, and then we'll move to the local perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to DJ. DJ? You're muted, DJ. Oh, and
Oh, here we go. I'm on mute now.
One more thing, DJ. If you would like to, I invite you to just reading in the chat and just say your name and just anything you'd like about yourself. So thank you. Thank you, DJ. Go ahead.
Thank you, Len Wo from Kosrae, Federated States of Micronesia. As Janice has explained or mentioned about myself, I have a passion with working with our community. It doesn't matter whether from Kosrae, but those from the COFA Nation. So I'm here to say a brief history of the COFA, what is called COFA, how we started and how we end up where we're at, and what needs to be done from this point forward. So having worked with our people, I found out that many of our the people that we work with, the agency don't really know how we started. We have a long history. There are 4 different administrative groups that administer Micronesia. That's Spanish, German. After the Second World War, that was Japanese, and then US came to the picture. So we used to be called the Trust Territory of the Pacific Island. That's TTPI. And in 1977, that's when the option was given for each state to give their determination to freely negotiate with US for their own economic development and self-reliance. US was being criticized in 1960 for not doing much for these islands that is called Trust Territory of the Pacific Island. And that's when they started to really geared up to see what they can do with our people. 1977 is the time that the political offer was made. So in 78, Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas started. That's in Saipan. And then 1979 to 1986, that's when Republic of Marshall Islands, RMI, Republic of Palau, Federated States of Micronesia came to the picture. And so this relationship started, and it was from that trusteeship agreement, which is like a father overlooking a son's welfare. So that trustee was for self-reliance and determining for economic development. So in this process, that was the history that created us. That COFA citizenship gives us the right to work in the US with no fees or labor certification, no limitation to stay. we used to be called qualified aliens when we started. But this relationship with US actually started when US took over all these islands, and started in 1945 to the 50s. That's when US started to experiment with some testing of nuclear. This is when specifically they started their installation of military in Kwajalein. And when I'm talking about this, I have to mention that in 1946 to 1958 is specifically, there is a trace of the testing that was done. According to some of the history that was recorded, there were a total of 67 atomic bombs. Bravo shot, first hydrogen bomb, Bauer, 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. Very powerful bomb that was designated in this area. They were using this area and as testing ground, especially when we're talking about Bikini and Inuit in the Marshall Islands. And it destroyed fishing grounds, contaminated land, ocean, traditional ways of living, culture, family identity, and it sets up a very untrustworthy relationship. So I would like to have us to see a video that will show more a picture of some of the damages that was done to our people. And we'll think about this. Let's think about the fact that these people are talking to these Marshallese, considering that they may not really understand all the ramification or all the side effects that will happen with the radioactives that will result from this experiment, or what they are choosing this island as their nuclear testing ground. So let's take a look at this.
The most terrible of all the weapons that man has ever built, the H-bomb, was detonated at Eniwetok.
12 years of tests, 67 nuclear bombs.
After World War II, everybody's racing to build the biggest nuclear weapons.
Let us hope that the time never comes when we must use it.
People actually lived for thousands of years in Bikini and Eniwetok, which are part of the Marshall Islands. The immediate impact of the bomb, fallout fell over some of the Marshall Islands. When the winds shifted, it dusted them, they got burns. The women who were pregnant immediately lost their kids. The kids were born deformed. Some of them had thyroid issues. Later on, ionizing radiation can cause cancer. There's cancers that are still evolving.
Dr. Neil Palafox worked in the Marshall Islands for 9 years.
This is a group of folks that I was working with.
He saw firsthand the catastrophic failures of the systems there.
The U.S. coerced the people to move for the nuclear testing. This was their home. Oh, we need to move you because of nuclear. Get on this barge and we'll move you right back. And of course they don't. The land's contaminated. They're forced into a place where they can't fish, are given canned foods in an inadequate health system. You're off your land, so you can't even fend for yourself in many ways. It's not just selling their house and, okay, I'll compensate you here, I'll give you another house. They've lost their total ancestral ties to everything. And, you know, their community breaks down.
In 1986, nearly 30 years after nuclear testing concluded, an international agreement was established between the U.S. and 3 Pacific Island sovereign states. The treaty was dubbed the Compacts of Free Association, or COFA. The U.S. would gain access to all land, sea, and airspace in this region, strengthening military facilities in the Pacific. In return, Micronesians would have access to migrating and legally living in the United States. This fueled a mass migration of
Can you still hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So that's the little clips of some of the damage or what I was trying to speak about. So now working at moving fast forward to 2023, here we are moving to the US. And all there is a dark secret that US is trying to forget the responsibility of the damages that has been done to the island and the neighboring islands in the Marshalls or the Trust Territory of the Pacific or COFA Nation. These effects has caused what we are continuing to see with our people, the plight of those that are getting cancer, the way of life that has changed that people refer to canned food and stuff like this that has caused high increase in diabetics and stuff like this. And all we're asking is that they don't forget about us. We're just asking for simple concession of, please let us have our I-94, the easiest way to fix it so we can get the access to the medical insurance and stuff that can help us out in the States, get our easier access to making Social Security number and stuff like this. So these are stuff that is not asking much at this time, but the system has prevented us from really getting our people to have accessibility to what they should have gotten from the US government. So we're here to educate or even to elevate the conversation, the dialogue for the responsibility of the damages that US has done to our people and trying to forget about it. They have a really big bill to pay for it, not to mention that there is a dome leaking back in Marshall Islands. If you want to see an equivalent to that, just a little spill here in the Hanford here in Washington, you will need a lot of people to try to contain that. So we're talking about, please don't forget about what you have done to damage our livelihood and the compensation that is due for our people or accessibility that we need here in the United States when we're right now settling in the US. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Great summary. Angela, you're on.
Hello. So I do have some slides. I don't know if anybody's able to pull them up, and then I can kind of just go through them.
We're working on it. Here we go. Oh, you're muted, Angela. Oh, we still can't hear you, Angela.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
So it like muted me and it had it on a weird function. I apologize. So hello everyone. Kasalalia Manko. I'm Angela. I identify first and foremost as a Micronesian American daughter. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So I don't consider myself an extreme expert of anything. All that I know I am is an expert of just being who I am, which, like I said, is a Micronesian American daughter. I just know my own experience and kind of where life has taken me, but kind of in addition to who I am, I'm also a social worker. I have a podcast also called For Micronesians by Micronesians. And then I just worked with Nathan Fitch on my first film, and it's called In Exile. And so I do a little bit of this, that, and the other in the COFA community. And I don't work for any organization. I'm just kind of somebody who's passionately out here fighting for COFA rights. So where that comes from is, I think the first time that I really had a little bit of a fire in me is a few years back, and I think some people who are on here have heard this story, but my father had a really serious medical crisis in which he had to go to the hospital, and it was really bad. He had to go. If he wouldn't have gone, he would have passed away. And so we were really grateful. I'm still grateful to this day for the medical staff that was there and was able to take care of him. My dad's still with me to this day. But his first stay in the hospital was only 3 days. And in those 3 days, his medical bill was more than he makes in an entire year. He does work full time. He's worked for over 40 years in the United States since he moved here when he came for college in the 70s. And he works in a nursing home, and the amount that he makes, he opts out of insurance because he would not be able to afford the cost of living if he opted in. And then he's in this really special place where he makes too much money that he's also not eligible for Medicaid. But at the time, he was not able to work. So he would have been eligible for Medicaid because he was not getting his hourly wage because he was in the hospital. But at the time, he was not eligible for Medicaid because he is COFA, and COFA is not eligible for Medicaid. And so at that time, that's when I was just, I think, slapped in the face with the reality that these taxes that he had paid into for decades and decades and decades of his life, he was kind of, it's like somebody compared it one time to bringing food to a potluck and then being told that you're not allowed to eat with everybody else. So it was a very humbling experience for our family. It was a lot of tears for me, I think, my sister as well. And so that's kind of what started this fire in me of being like, we need to do better. Our system in America needs to do better to really care for our COFA folks. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is what my agenda was going to be. You can go to the next slide, and then I might have you skip because I think DJ did actually a really phenomenal job of explaining who COFA is. So we can go past these parts and go past this one as well. And then even the next one. So here, we'll stop here. So today I was asked to kind of share from kind of a non-political stance, but just someone in the community, what CIFA is. I call it CIFA. I've heard people call it CIFA, 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 all sorts of things. And so I kind of broke this down into what I think is the easiest way to explain it. So CIFA stands for the Compact Impact Fairness Act, which in layman's terms would restore eligibility for COFA citizens to receive public benefits such as SNAP, TANF, SSI, SSBG, education assistance, and other programs that were restricted as a part of 1996 welfare reform law. So at one point in time, COFA, our residents, our citizens were eligible for these very specific benefits, including Medicaid. Medicaid we restored in 2020. And these, if CIFA goes through, would also be eligible again for COFA. It is a bipartisan bill. I say that very proudly because I want to make it a point to say this is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is not any other party's issue. This is a bipartisan issue. This is something that impacts humans. It has nothing to do with what party you're a part of. This is, these are our family members. These are people in our community that are hardworking, that are doing great work, that are really being a part of the thread of the American system, who are working hard for the development and achievement of America. And so it's really important to support this bill because it supports so many of our COFA persons that are living in the US. And so I did put this down here. I'm a social worker by trade. So in the social work world, we talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some people may be familiar with that. I'm sure a lot of people are because I think they teach it in a lot of different disciplines. But basically, Maslow was this really, really smart, scholarly man, and he found that there's this pyramid of needs. And basically, for a person to be a whole, healthy human being, you have to be able to have all these needs to be the best version of yourself, and they all have to be met. But you're not able to how do I explain it? So if you look at this graph, it goes from the top to the bottom. So you're not able to be the healthiest version of the next part unless you get the layer at the bottom and then the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. So unless you feel safety, there's no way that you can elevate to having a healthy, you know, version of yourself with love and belonging. And then you can't have esteem, which is like self-esteem, confidence, achievement, unless you have both safety and love, and it moves up. So I say all of this because CIFA is a really important bill also because these are very basic needs. So for any of us to be the most self-actualized, healthy, growing person that we can be, at the very, very base of all being, we have to have at least safety, which, or I'm sorry, it's not safety, it's at the very bottom, but it's like your physiological needs, which is just basic things like housing and food. And you have to be able to have those things to even get to safety or to get to love.
Not give them
Oh, sorry. So I just wanted to say, like, at a very basic level, this is one of the reasons why CIFA is so important, because it really is a human rights issue. I think it's making sure that every person is, including COFA, is being granted at least basic needs. So we can go to the next slide. So I did say how you can help, and so I had those things. I wanted to include resources. So I know that National Immigration Law Center, they also have the Lift the Bar Act, which is a different, you know, it's something different you'd be signing. But if you were interested in it, I'm hoping these slides will go out so that people can click on the actual links. But it would also be able to get some of those same benefits for COFA. There is a petition on change.org, which is CIFA for COFA citizens. And so that is something that, you know, can also be printed out and dispersed to politicians. For Micronesians by Micronesians podcast, I am just shamelessly plugging at this point because that is my podcast. But if you would like to listen, I have so many great people on there who are just amazing Micronesians from all across the Micronesian region, not just one specific country, but from like Palau, from people who grew up in America like myself. I have an Instagram as well, for Micronesians by Micronesians, all one word. I included the bill that is for FAS veterans, which I think is a really good read. That's on there. And then I always recommend people to CAN, WOW, and ACOM. Those are organizations that I think are phenomenal. Something else that I think is just important to mention is that over the past decade, COFA residence has actually risen by 68%. So that statistic is actually coming from our government, from the US government. That comes from the government's GOW report. They put that out on their own. And in that statistic, if you read the actual report, that's including people like myself. So what am I? So I'm an American citizen. I was born and raised in America, but my family came from Micronesia. But I think it's really important because not only am I an American citizen, but I'm a voting American citizen. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us who are considered a part of this COFA community, but we're American citizens and we consider this place home. And I think it's really important that our politicians know that too. So I really, if anything that anyone takes from this, I really just want to advocate for people to advocate themselves and talk to your politicians, because there's a lot of power in story. There's a lot of power in voice. And I think so many of our politicians don't even know that these things affect us or affect our families because they're not familiar with our people. So I really just urge people to talk to your politicians, write letters, make phone calls, anything you can, and just do your best. So I think that might be my last slide. Thank you. Thank you. We can go on. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Angela. All right, Keone, you're up. What more can you tell us about CIFA, CIFA, COFA, and the negotiations?
Thank you. And so first off, aloha, Yakwe, Kasali, and Ali. I don't know if we have any of our Palauan friends with us. Oh, Chihu. But it's a pleasure to be with you. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, aloha, I'm Keone Nakoa. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Insular and International Affairs at the Department of the Interior. And so with the Assistant Secretary, Carmen Cantor, we have the primary responsibility from the interior to implement the compacts of free association. As DJ mentioned before, that role or responsibility, and hopefully you guys can hear me. I had some mic problems earlier. That responsibility from the interior is a remaining piece of the Trust Territories of the Pacific Islands. So this goes back to when Hawaii was my home. So I'm Native Hawaiian. Hawaii was also a territory. It wasn't in the TTPI, but back in those days, the interior had a lot of the management responsibilities for everyone. The High Commissioner was out of Saipan. And if you know our representative out of American Samoa, Radawagan, she I believe was born in Saipan, but then it was also, I think, raised in the Marshalls. It has a lot of affinity. She was named after one of the first Marshallese, President Amata. And so, that's why the interior is involved. So ever since I got into the department about 2.5 years ago, I started working on the compacts from the negotiation team. I was in varying roles, the lead of the negotiation, and then when we got Special Presidential Envoy Joe Yun out to join us as the presidential envoy on compact negotiations, I then became the interior lead on the compact negotiation team. As most of you, or probably all of you, are well aware, we finished the compact negotiations with FSM and Palau over the summer. And then we just finished, we signed the compact with the Marshall Islands back in October. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in Honolulu and we had the signing with President Kabua and the chief negotiator Philip Muller was there, and also we had Ambassador Yun and Ambassador Cantor from our side. So in the meantime, while all that's going on, we also submitted legislation after the signings with the FSM and Palau over the summer to ask Congress to provide us about $7.1 billion in mandatory funding for us to implement the compact agreements that we arrived with the three freely associated states. It roughly, I used to have these numbers on the tip of my tongue, so excuse me if I'm wrong. It's about $900 million, over 20 years, $900 million for Palau, $2.3 billion for the Marshall Islands, and $3.3 billion for the Federated States of Micronesia. These primarily go to a cadre of economic assistance programs through direct economic assistance, and then also through trust fund. Yes, 2.3 billion for the Marshall Islands. 3.3 was for FSM. And so the series of economic assistance provisions through grant assistance and also through the trust fund or distributions out of the compact trust funds that were created in 2003. Also included, and this is hot off the press, we had been, the administration's proposal had included the Compact Impact Fairness Act, CIFA, as well as the fix for Veterans Affairs, for the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to be able to provide health services to compact citizens living in the compact states. So as it stands, COFA veterans are able to receive benefits if they're living in the United States. However, when they go back home after honorably serving the United States, they would not be eligible for a lot of services. So we had put into our proposal a fix to that. So what is hot off the press is just today the committee, at least in the Senate side for sure, dropped the Senate joint resolution that is the legislative vehicle for moving the $7.1 billion. Or sorry, let me also just shore up something. If anyone was doing the math on my numbers, the reason that there is about $600 million off is that is the amount going to the Postal Service to continue USPS service in the 3 FAS. And then, so this is the legislative vehicle that will allow us to provide or allowed Congress to appropriate the funds so that the administration can implement the 3 renewed agreements with the FAS. And so we're very, very happy after much deliberation and questions from Congress to note that the Compact Impact Fairness Act in its entirety made it into the legislative proposal from Congress, as well did the Veterans Affairs provisions. And so, you know, what we see before us that has now been introduced, and again, just like Angela said, this is bipartisan and bicameral. My understanding is that the House will be introducing a similar measure very soon, if they haven't thrown it in the hopper already. To verbatim, I think the text should be the exact same. Thank you, Megan. And for those of you who don't know, Megan O'Connor is from Senator Hirono's staff. She's one of the original sponsors, co-sponsors of the Compact Impact Fairness Act, and a huge champion for COFA communities across the country. And so that's the last kind of procedural thing to the introduction, or that's the next step in the procedural process. And then now is up to Congress to actually enact these measures and pass the bills. But you know, this was a huge step because getting agreement from both House and Senate and Republicans and Democrats alike on language that everyone was happy with was a major feat. I know Megan has spent many hours talking with colleagues around the Congress, and so we're very happy to see that finally introduced today, and the administration is happy to help Congress answer any questions that will help Congress move forward with these bills. And then, sorry, I'm not getting all the questions, but so just to answer the question about the committees, this is the main jurisdiction has been granted to the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. I'm sorry, Environment and Natural Resources, and ENR, and then the House Natural Resources Committee as well. So that's who it's with currently. And Megan, I'm embarrassed, and sorry for watching what the E stands for, but if you can confirm, that'd be helpful.
Sorry, I'm confirming what?
Sorry, what is ENR?
Oh, Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. Because the freely associated states count as insular areas for Congress, and under their previous statuses, they fall under the Natural Resources and Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I'm happy to answer any questions about CIFA, but Angela did a great job, and essentially it's just meant to you know, put the people who come to our country under the compact agreements in the same place as anybody else. Like she said, I like that analogy of being asked to bring food to a potluck but not being allowed to eat. That is a situation that's been the case since 1996, and I'm very happy that this administration and this Congress seems to be moving to address that issue. So with that, I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions.
There are a number of questions in the chat. There was a question about the bill numbers to Megan.
Yeah, the House bill is for CIFA is 1571 and the Senate bill is 792. But for the whole compact package, that both of those were dropped, introduced in the House and the Senate just this evening, like around 2 hours ago. So we don't have bill numbers for those yet, and I can follow up with offices. Feel free to reach out to me or Krista in Congressman Case's office, and we're happy to talk to you, answer questions, or have your boss added to either bill.
There's another question from CC. Does CIFA include a clause to include a smooth pathway to U.S. citizenship for FAS citizens?
It doesn't. So CIFA specifically is just the federal program access. There were a couple of the bigger programs that were mentioned, but it is a fairly all-inclusive umbrella option. So that would mean even smaller programs and that have more niche focus than things like SNAP. And Keone might be able to talk to this a little bit more, but the immigration/citizenship provisions for citizens of the freely associated states when they come and live in the U.S. or the territories are sort of an entirely separate issue that was negotiated between the U.S. and the freely associated states.
Yeah,
That's correct. CIFA unfortunately wouldn't impact that. But have, I guess, during the negotiations that had come up, and we're happy to continue to work with the governments, I guess, in trying to figure out how we can make things more smooth. And I should also at this point highlight that part of the compacts, the new compact agreements, includes more regular discussions between the governments. One thing that we saw in the current situation was that there hadn't been as much engagement between the governments at a very high level over the last 20 years, and so there were a lot of issues that were not addressed, and so we sought to address a lot of that by having more regular and very high level discussions between the FAS governments and the United States government.
I know people have questions, so maybe just folks can just unmute and share your questions. That would be easier for me.
Janice, I'll go first because I don't
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Macon and Keone. Just to reiterate and make sure we're understanding access to federal programs, correct?
CC, we can barely hear you. Can you maybe put your question in the chat because it was really kind of garbled?
Oh, dang it. Am I clear now or no?
It's better, yeah.
Okay. Just to clarify, CIFA is meant just for us to gain access into federal programs that we're not getting right now, correct? And then, Keone, you also mentioned that moving forward with these new signed compacts, there is a understanding that there will be frequent dialogue between the countries and the U.S. How can you define frequent, like quarterly, every month? How does that happen? How will that happen?
I think it depends on, I guess, what aspects you're talking about, but and my memory's a little shaky on some of the details. I want to say that there is at least check-ins every 5 years on major issues. There's annual meetings being set up between within the federal government, and I think it's being envisioned that the FAS governments will be a part of that as well. It's kind of similar to the Intergovernmental Group on Insular Affairs, IGIA, if anyone's familiar with that. And then there are much more regular discussions in the bodies of the Joint Economic Committee for Management of the FSM and RMI economic assistance provisions, and on the trust funds. And on the Palau side, there's at least an annual consultation between the governments to hear the recommendations from this economic advisory group that we just constituted this past year out of the last Compact Review Act CRA with Palau in 2010. And they're making recommendations for policies and programs and things, how Palau could best move forward to develop economically.
Oh, Megan.
I'm trying to
Hi,
answer
everyone. Can you hear
questions
me
as
okay?
quickly as possible in the chat to keep up with them. I think there was a question about continuing to measure numbers and characteristics of COFA citizens, as there used to be for Guam, Hawaii, and CNMI. The Government Accountability Office, GAO, will continue to have its mandate to keep track of the COFA population and provide Congress with information. They really have been the only federal research agency that has had that mandate, and they're the ones that we rely on for information about population of COFA citizens across the US, what sort of how those populations are changing and what their needs are. And they also have recently been out to the freely associated states and some of the territories in the Pacific to do an assessment of the number of US veterans in those areas. And they'll be producing a report about that as well. So they continue to take that job really seriously, and we really appreciate the research that they provide about this population.
Megan Udemy from U.S. Senator Patty Murray's office.
Hi, I wasn't sure if anybody could hear me. Could you hear me all right? Hi. Hi, everyone. Jen is always so grateful for the space. My name is Megan. I work for U.S. Senator Patty Murray. I'm also a COFA citizen from the Republic of Palau, so this is very special to me, of course. I think I have a few questions, and I definitely have heard of COFA and CIFA. I might be mixing up acronyms off of that soup here, but in totally different spaces. So I guess my question would be, my first question is, I know that within each island, the ambassadors themselves are advocating for funding and do their own advocacy. How can local advocates work with their, I guess, like own countries to make changes in a more unilateral way?
Just make sure I'm understanding the question. Like, what are the fast governments, or what can the fast governments do to?
Yeah, because from my understanding, like the embassies that are located in DC do their own advocacy and have their own government advocacy groups that are talking about, or that are advocating for specific types of funding, which is what happened with the renegotiating of COFA. How can they incorporate, I guess, like, is there a mechanism for them to work with local advocates? Sorry, that might not be a question for you, but I just know that they do advocacy there from the islands, and there are also islanders here in the US. So how can that be more collaborative work?
I actually might lean on, if she's available, one of the staffers, one of the people in my office, Tanya Joshua, and the reason I'm hopefully calling on her if she can shed some light is because she used to work for the FSM embassy, I believe, in the past, and so she might have some comments if she's available to speak.
Hi, thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Keone, for the introduction. Iyango Kaselelie Mainko. I hail from the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, but I've been in Washington, D.C. since the year 2000. Started with the Embassy of Micronesia and now have the honor to work with the Department of the Interior, and very happy to be part of Keone Nakoa's team. I wanted to say that we at the Office of OIA, we have a very close relationship with the embassies, and try to work very closely with them to help make sure that there's connections and awareness. I think this is a really important meeting that you're having here, because you're bringing more of the community members that in the past, usually we're dealing with governments, but not so much with community members. I wanted to give a shout out to Keone, because he has also been having some discussions. The White House, some of the members are on the line here, the current White House hosted a COFA meeting to talk about some of the I-94 issues. What we've needed at the federal government level is, I'm a career person, so I'm not a political. We need that political push to sometimes make things happen and bring better attention to issues. And so that has been brought in this administration very well by Keone and the White House. And so I was part of a meeting where they hosted with some of you recently, and we've been quite tied up, but I know Keone has reached out to me and asked how we can move forward to sort of do some meetings regular meetings and perhaps with the community that can help to break down some of those silos. And while we have this current White House and the political push, the interest that they're bringing and the movement that's happening in Congress with the Compact of Free Association, there's a lot of momentum right now so anyway, just to say hello, I'm working with Keone, we'll support him and the White House team that's on this call. Grateful to see members and staffers from US Congress that are also on this call and listening in to issues from the community. And we'll see what we can do on our side to put out something that maybe establish a regular, maybe quarterly, where we can reach out to the community. There are people in the federal government who are working on island issues, but it's a matter of us doing better to pull them together. And with the political push that we have now, I think that now is a very good time. So thank you for the opportunity. Kailangan.
Thank you, Tanya.
Robinson Lee, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, Yahweh Olive. Yahweh, my name is Robinson Lee. I'm the executive director for Ohio Atlantic Gate, so I'm kind of new, or I just became official in January. I'm from the Republic of the Marshall Islands, one of your COFA brothers, from Bikini Atoll. So nuclear legacy, as I see, you guys discussing it, is one subject that's been near and dear to my heart for many years. It's something I really advocate for, and surprisingly, during my time meeting all community leaders here in the state of Ohio, not many people know about the nuclear experiment that was performed in the Marshall Islands Bikini Atoll. Just to give you a little bit more brief history about myself. My mother's from Bikini, my father's from South Korea, so I'm half. And my mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, was the one responsible when there was a dispute on Kili Island where they moved the Bikinians to, and he moved half the population back to Bikini between 1976 and 1978. So that's why the nuclear legacy is really, near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to ask the main ones I think that I really want to know the answer for. Number one is for the COFA compact agreement, the third one between the Marshall Islands, was nuclear legacy finally accepted as President Kabua asked for at the United Nations speech?
Sorry, I didn't hear the word. Was nuclear legacy what?
Was nuclear legacy finally added to the Compact of Free Association, the third one?
I think what I can say is that the agreement allows for significant amount of funds to be used at the Republic of the Marshall Islands government's prioritization for whatever purpose that they choose. And so, it's kind of was as much as the United States government could go, while still acknowledging the settlement, that we reached in '86 and everything else. But but nevertheless, as I think was mentioned, we want to address any issue that the Marshall Islands feels is a priority for the people. And I think we were able to address that as in a way that allows the government to do so through the compact terms.
Okay. I'm a little bummed to hear that, because nuclear legacy is the main thing that brought us all together, especially us nonprofits and all you guys, figures, brother and sister organizations. And yet, this third compact, as it seems like there's more restrictions to it, and the nuclear legacy is kind of, disappearing, gradually. But it is the main thing that brought us together, especially for the people of the South Pacific, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Republic of Palau. It's what brought them to here to the United States. That was the key. And any members here from Four Atoll, Bikini, and Wadak Rongat, and Woodruk would understand that would really understand why this is it's kind of sad to hear about. And if, like, for the CIFA bill, that's directly related to the nuclear legacy, and if this CIFA bill is passed, will it affect us, for atoll, should I say, citizens, or people who really suffered from the damage between 1946 and 1958? And please understand, I say this on behalf, because I'm also a representative for our local government, Bikini Atoll. So whatever questions I ask, I mean no disrespect. I just want to know, for the sake of my people's future.
So I just I totally understand what you just said. The only thing that the only thing that I want to clarify is the comment that you said about that this third, I like to say the third phase of the compact is more restrictive, or somehow boxes the RMI or the FAS in more. That's just absolutely not true. There is significantly more autonomy allowance for the Republic of the Marshall Islands and the FSM government and Palau government to choose and program out exactly what they want to spend funds on. And let me just walking you through it. In Compact 1, I think there was a bit of a, when I say Compact 1, I mean 1986 to 2003. In Compact 1, there was not many controls or anything like that with the money, because or after that there was some geo reports, and I think it was pretty roundly acknowledged that there needed to be some additional controls put in terms of how funding was used, programmed, and audited, and everything like that. That's what led to 2003. In 2003, there was significant controls put on the money. Basically, the United States government, through the GEMS and the Trust Fund Committee, could dictate how every dollar was spent, because of the amount of leverage that the United States had out of the 2003 compacts. From there, we go to this compact, and we strip that down significantly at the urging and as a part of the negotiation with the governments. So now the governments have significant say over what they can program out, and the United States really is left in a position to ensure that the money is, being used appropriately as the FSM and RMI governments are saying, that there is no, waste, fraud, abuse, kinds of things that you just can't allow with any public funding, in general. But then the ways that they can program, and for example, in the current trust fund or in the current economic assistance, RMI really just programs money to education and health. In this next iteration, the RMI is free to propose whatever uses they want within the sector, within the sectors that are defined. So there's education, there's health, there's government support, there's private sector infrastructure, and so there's a lot more. There really is a lot more autonomy for the Marshall Islands government to choose how they want to spend things, and for them to really be empowered to make those choices on their own. And the United States government is really acting as a partner instead of a big brother.
All right.
Thank you, sir. To be fair, I'm going to let others ask their question, but thank you so much.
There are a couple more questions in the chat, but we had wanted to move to kind of the local perspective in Washington State. And so if I don't know who could answer some of the questions that are in the chat, but I would like maybe Keone or Tanya or Megan, if you wouldn't mind taking a look at what's there. And then I wanted to introduce Danya Otto, who is the executive director of Sakura's 39ers, the first Chuukese-led youth organization building community in Vancouver, Washington, to provide a local perspective. So, Danya?
Thank you, Janice. Hello, everyone, and Faranim. I would like to extend my greetings to all of you, to the state congressional delegation, state legislators, and other advocates here with us today, and of course, my fellow COFA brothers and sisters. My name is Danya Rescue Otto. I am talking to you live from Vancouver, Washington in Clark County. I am second generation Chuukese American born, the daughter of two Chuukese migrants that came to the US in the late 1970s on student visas, with Chuukese parents that have experienced many barriers in the US for many, many years. Also, my late father, who worked for the FSM consulate office in Honolulu for 17 years as a foreign liaison officer and a community advocate. I grew up watching him and hearing about COFA negotiations and watching my father restlessly advocating for COFA citizens. So this work is very near and dear to my heart. Today, I serve our COFA communities in Clark County as the executive director for Sakura 39ers Youth Association, a Chuukese by and for nonprofit here in Southwest Washington. We run educational, cultural, sports programs, and community research programs for all of our COFA citizens. Our organization was developed to identify and help and break barriers that our communities and members face every day trying to survive and thrive here in Clark County. I also work as the Chuukese interpreter and translator for our Vancouver Public School District. And both of these positions I serve, my job is to see, feel, experience what barriers we have on the ground here and tackle them or try to tackle them one by one or collectively. I will only cover 3 of our major barriers very briefly. Number 1 is our housing. We all know that this is a big challenge, not only for COFA communities, but every human body in a systematic world where housing is not free. But with our COFA communities, we have language barriers, cultural barriers, and systemic barriers that prevent us to access housing like everyone else. We see barriers with people trying to obtain affordable housing, but also to be able to stay in their current housing with uncontrollable rent increases. Sakura 39ers facilitates a rental assistance program for unhoused or homeless youth. Here I have a few numbers to throw out just to see how much our people are trying to stay afloat with rent. With our ERAP and HPDF rental assistance funding, this is what Sakura 39ers has accessed in 2023. Between October 4th, 2023 till today, Sakura 39ers has accessed about $71,526.58 in HPDF funding to serve 24 households in our COFA community. Between April 2nd, 2023 to May 24th, Sakura accessed $15,340.64 in HPDF funding to serve 4 households. Sakura 39ers has submitted applications for 19 households between March 30th, 2023 to June 20th, 2023, in a total amount of funding of $116,834.06. In that mix, we've had 77 households with eviction notices, and 1/3 of these were eviction summons already and also going to court. But please keep in mind that these are the only numbers for our organization that we have access to. We have multiple organizations that also serve our COFA communities. We also have other citizens that have not been yet served due to our capacities. Another barrier is access to adequate and quality work for our people. These numbers for rental assistance and evictions wouldn't be so high if we were able to access work properly. Some citizens that don't have their I-94s anymore can't get the jobs that they want or need to live in this economy. How do we fix that barrier? And how is it possible to afford cost of living if we can't access the jobs that pay and sustain us? Another barrier is access to resources. 80% of families we serve cannot access public housing or housing assistance due to either a language barrier or they don't know how to use a computer or navigate the internet and the systems. Some people with the language barrier are intimidated to walk into an office, knowing there won't be any staff that looks like them or speak their language. We have held community resource events here in Clark County to help members enroll in Vancouver Housing Authority, Apple Health, and access legal services through Clark County Lawyers Volunteer Program. I mean, we're just trying to help our communities here have better access to resources. We know that we have many barriers as COFA communities here in Clark County, too many to fit into a Zoom session. But housing, access to work, and access to resources are just a few of our main barriers. We are the COFA community here in Clark County. We're here, we're living every day with barriers. We are underrepresented and underserved. Please support us and support CIFA. Thank you, and Giso Dabo.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's great to hear all the great work that you're doing down south in Clark County. And I wanted to turn to our last speaker, Bradley Carlos, who is our team leader here at Neighborhood House, and he's going to share a local perspective here in King County.
Oh, I'm on. Hey, everyone. Everyone can hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share some slides, but I won't be able to see anyone or see any questions. So after I'm done, ask away. Mm-hmm. All right. So actually, there we go. All right. So the citizens of Micronesian nations, in order to compensate the 3 Micronesian nations of the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of Marshall Islands, and the Republic of Palau. The COFA treaties provided Micronesian people with the right to live, work, and receive some public welfare benefits in the United States. I emphasize on the word some because more welfare benefits are needed in order to meet the basic needs to live and survive in the US. According to the GOA 2020 report, the COFA migrant population has increased to about 94,000 people living here in the US, and about 8,000 of those citizens live here in the state of Washington. The need for healthcare is much needed for the COFA nation migrants. However, this is at the cost of their other basic needs not being met because migrating to the US is not very equitable. According to the News Tribune, the average living expenses in Washington state is $1,842. This is for groceries, rent, and utilities. The average monthly cost for telecommunications, such as cell phones, cable, and internet, is $402. This does not include other necessities such as transportation costs, medication costs, etc. There are many factors that play a role as to why this is not equitable for the COFA citizens. So it's good to know the living conditions that these migrants are going through prior to moving to the US. According to the US Department of State, the minimum hourly wage for working in one of the COFA nations is as follows. For the Chuk Island, it's $1.25 an hour. Krishai, $1.42. Pohnpei, $2. Yap, $1.60. For the Marshall Islands, it's $2. And Palau is the highest at $4.25. And these are numbers for typically the government workers in the islands. These next numbers come from the state of Hawaii's Department of Business, Economic and Development and Tourism, as there's no data that I could find for the Washington state. But I wanted to go over this to, again, show some of the hardships that when migrants do come to Washington state. If we look at the chart, the average household number is about 5.4 people per house. This is similar to the client's household numbers that we serve at Neighborhood House, which averages about 6 people. However, we have some families, of course, it's all multi-generational family, and the households go up to about 13 members, if not more. But with an average household of 6, they're supported with a yearly income of about $34,000. If we look lower on the chart, we can see that about 9.6% have less than a 9th grade education level, 20.4% entered high school but had no diploma. And these numbers also include the US citizens or the people that are US citizens that whose family originated from one of the COFA nations. And if you look at the bachelor's degrees and associate degree numbers, those aren't very high as well, most likely because it's hard to raise yourself up when you don't have the resources. So as I go further into my presentation, please keep note of these numbers as they will paint a better picture. So one of the biggest issues that we've been having here at Neighborhood House is the I-94. When coming into the US, citizens of the COFA nations are given an I-94. The I-94 is a deciding factor on how successful that person or family may be while living in the US. It is their lifeline to access Social Security, obtain a driver's license, apply for a job, apply for welfare benefits, or any other benefits that they're eligible for. However, what happens when it is lost or stolen? There's no place in Washington to go or someone to speak to in order to retrieve a replacement. The US Customs Border and Protection Agency has created a way for people to obtain their I-94 online. However, it automatically cuts off online access to these cards after 10 years, and the data hasn't been accessible online for people who entered prior to April 2012. But In the summer of 2022, it was updated where they took out the time limit and also extended it for people who came in prior to 2012. But with every new development comes some kinks that still needs to be worked out. And with the online platform, some concerns when replacing an I-94 where it can't be utilized on CBP's online platform are when the original documents linked to the I-94 is lost, such as the entry date or their original passport number. When their I-94s were originally stamped with the wrong country of origin, when their I-94 is inputted with the incorrect names, sometimes names are reversed. Sometimes they put the middle name as the first name, things like that. If an I-94 cannot be found online, then an I-102 form needs to be submitted. This costs about $444 for the application. And that's an exorbitant amount, especially for someone that is coming from one of the COFA nations. Again, I went over the minimum wage for that. However, with working with the CBP for over the past few years, we finally have made some traction in the right direction. One that I'm happy to share. We have recently been designated a partner within CBP who is assigned to us at Neighborhood House to assist with obtaining a person's I-94 in King County, where there's no cost for our clients. However, what I would like to advocate for are those COFA migrants that don't know about Neighborhood House or seek our services or live outside of King County. Prior to our assigned partner with CBP, Neighborhood House had to find CB partners in other counties, states, as a way to obtain an I-94. This was not always successful. Some families used to have to cross the border in hopes that they could obtain a new I-94. In crossing the border with Canada, it's really a hit or miss on whether or not they are going to obtain an I-94. Most likely, most of the time it was a miss. The other option was to cross the Mexican border. Both of these options are timely and puts the whole family at risk. Also, I would like to add that if you do have a criminal history, this would not be an option for you because you would be deported right back to one of the COFA islands. It also places a huge financial burden on families due to the cost of travel, but this needs to be done in order to apply for jobs or keep current ones or apply for benefits, all to better lift their current financial living conditions. Other concerns and issues that we have been facing here at Neighborhood House is inconsistencies with documentation needed for benefits, and that's through DSHS, Social Security, Department of Licensing. We present a document and they're now asking for more. They need a birth certificate, they need an old passport, and all of old passport number, and all of these documents would have to be retrieved back at home, which could take a long time. And so with that being said, that also puts more pressure on all of our clients because they're needing these benefits or they're needing their needing it for their I-94 or again to help to provide for their families. Also, there's inconsistencies on who is eligible to receive SSDI. There's a huge gray area on if someone from the COFA nation is able to receive SSDI. And then accessing benefits, there's a huge language barrier. For us at Neighborhood House, we have I have DJ, Triple, and Florence that speak 3 different languages, but again, there's more people, more nations that need to also be served. Another thing is limited career opportunities because of people from the COFA nation not being a US citizen or actually are not having a green card or having a visa, they're not able to apply or work for certain places. An example of this would be Boeing. If you have an I-94, you still cannot work for Boeing because it doesn't fit one of their regulations or fit one of their contracts. Also limited career opportunities in the military. It is hard for people to move up the ladder in the military. Housing, like Danya said, is huge, but there's also inconsistencies when applying for HUD in Section 8. The eligibility or they're denied access due to not enough credits. Also, the housing is not, if they are granted it finally, it's not culturally appropriate for the household size. Shelters not allowing families in if one person is without an I-94. And I actually was recently at a immigrations conference in Washington, D.C., and no one was able to answer my question on how someone from one of the COFA nations is able to become a U.S. citizen with their status. And of course, if CIFA does not pass, praying that it does, what about the those benefits, and how will the community be able to receive them? The COFA population in Washington have a lower income compared to the general population. The COFA population also has the largest average household size and is more likely to live below the poverty line compared to non-COFA populations here in Washington. So we really need to look at special education, social welfare, and housing programs because that is what's needed here in Washington.
Thanks, Bradley. There's a question from Andrew Hayes from Congressman Adam Smith's office about our special designation that we received from CBP. Can you describe that?
Special designation as in the person that we are working with?
Andrew, can you?
Yeah, I was just curious, you had mentioned that. I was just curious, like what's changed that's made it so that you can advocate directly with CBP to get those I-94s, and is that something that can be replicated?
What's changed is all of these meetings, that all of the listening sessions, all of the complaints. We've actually, I'm thankful for Janice for being so persistent in reaching out. Also, our Congress people here in Washington, they sent over a case manager to help look into this case, which helped link us in to help put a little bit more pressure. So by adding that pressure, we were able to say, hey, we went a whole year and a half with going back and forth. So, I mean, I forgot to mention in one of the slides, but if you looked at the numbers, over the past 2 years, we were able to help about 179 people, but it took a whole year and a half. But within a month, we were able to help 33 individuals. And again, for me, it's huge because hearing the stories and working with all of the clients is what we do every day. And to tell them, okay, we don't have this paperwork yet. We don't have this paperwork yet. Oh, and having that family then move into a shelter and then getting kicked out of a shelter because they've been there for too long. It's something that we have to do and so by putting pressure on, of course, our actually not putting pressure, but by working together with our local government, we're able to put pressure more so on CBP and immigration.
Okay, so thanks for explaining. So it's basically just kind of like they're more responsive, or you have a person that is actually responsive to your request at CBP. It's not some kind of like formal, there's not some kind of formal relationship that you guys were able to get. It's just, they know they're going to hear from us, from constituents.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And just huge thank you to you, Andrew, for
Yes.
brokering those meetings with CBP and yeah, I don't think we would be as far as we are without you and Congressman Smith's advocacy. So I really, really appreciate your support. Yeah. All right, we're at 4:28. I know we probably lots of other questions, but out of respect for everyone, want to wrap this up. Huge thank you to DJ, Angela, Keone, Danya, Bradley, all of our elected officials and representatives that are on the call. Special thank you to Erica Morgitsu from the White House office, who helped connect us to Keone and brokered that original meeting, COFA meeting a couple months back. And to all the advocates, thank you so much for all that you're doing here in Washington State and across the United States and on the islands. There is a survey, not a survey, a petition, Angela's petition, change.org, to support CIFA, CIFA. So if you have not signed it, please do so. Thank you all for all your hard work, and we will circle back with a recording, the slides, and then I think Tanya put her email in there. She'd like to make sure she has all of your contact info as well too. So thank you all and good night.
Bye.